Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to use Sprite Packer. Let's begin by making a new folder for our game. Let's call this folder My Game. Inside this folder, let's create another one called Textures. Now let's take a look at the textures we're going to be using. As you can see, we have a sprite sheet for our bunny here. We have random objects, and we also have some terrain textures for the ground and sky. So let's go ahead and bring these into our textures directory. And you can see they've all been imported with default settings. So now let's go back to the My Game directory and let's create a Sprite Packer. To do that, right click in the directory and click Create, and then click on Sprite Packer here. Now you'll see a Sprite Packer prefab has been added to our project. Now if we go back to the textures folder, we can just drag and drop them onto the drag and drop field here. But you'll notice that if you try and drag and drop multiple textures, that the texture import settings inspector comes up. If you want to drag and drop multiple things, then go back to the Sprite Packer and just click on the drag and drop field, and it will open a persistent window. So now we can select all of our textures and drag them into the Sprite Packer, and if we click Sprite Packer here, then it will select it for us, and you'll see we've added all the textures. Now you'll notice that I didn't add the bunny rabbit texture yet. That's because first we need to slice this into four sprites. To do that, just change the texture type here from texture to sprite. Change sprite mode from single to multiple, and then click on the sprite editor here. And in the top left you see slice. If you just click slice, then you see it automatically adds rectangles where it thinks they should be. In this case they're fine and they don't need tweaking. So let's just hit apply in the top right. And let's add the bunny rabbit to our Sprite Packer. Now if we go back to the Sprite Packer and just hit rebuild, then this will change the import settings for all of our textures, and more importantly it will add them all to our texture atlas. You'll see the bunny rabbit here has been sliced up, and it's no longer in the same horizontal alignment that it was before, so this leads to very efficient packing. And if we open up this sprite sheet, then you'll see all the sprites inside it. So now we can just go ahead and drag these into our scene. And if you open the stats window here, you will see that the draw call count is always 1. So if you were to do this same scene setup without the use of Sprite Packer, then right now you'd be looking at 3 draw calls. Now 3 draw calls isn't much, but imagine if you finished your project and you have, let's say, 100 sprites on screen, you'd be looking at least 100 draw calls, which is clearly unacceptable for iOS or Android devices. So this is very nice, 1 draw call. However, if you have more advanced scenes, for example, if you want to tile these sky textures, actually before we do that, let's go ahead and change the pixels to units value here. I know that these sprites are 128 by 128 pixels, so to make my life easier, let's change the pixels to units value to 128. So now this sprite here is 1 unit by 1 unit in size. So if we position this at 0, 0, 0, and if we go ahead and duplicate this and position the second one at 1, 0, 0, which is right next to it, you'll notice that it looks fine in the game view, but if we move the camera in a bit, then I'm not sure if you can notice it on YouTube, but there's actually a seam between the 2 textures. The reason for this seam is because right at the edge of these sprites, they are fading into alpha. This is Sky 2, so if we go ahead and select Sky 2, you'll see the edges are transparent. So that's the cause of the seam. Now this is quite a common problem with atlases, but Sprite Packer makes this quite easy to fix. So here we find Sky 2 here. If we hover over it, then the advanced texture settings will pop up. Now we just need to change the border type here from transparent and change it to clamp. Now if we hit rebuild again, you'll notice the seam has vanished. And if we go back to the Sky 2 sprite here, you'll notice the edges have been filled in and it's no longer transparent. So that's it for the main features. There are some additional handy features as well that I've added. For example, you can change the maximum size of the atlas here. This is very useful if your target device has a maximum texture size. For example, if your texture size budget is 512 by 512, then just set that here. Now if we click rebuild, you'll see we've got an error and it says it failed to pack the textures. So this lets you know when you've exceeded your texture budget, so you can adjust the sizes of your textures or remove some things from your scene accordingly. Additionally, if you were to remove something from the Sprite Packer, if we remove fan and then hit rebuild, you'll notice the fan sprite just vanished. So if that was by accident and you want to revert that, then we go back to the textures directory, find the fan texture, and we add that back. Now if you rebuild, you'll see the texture reference here has been retained. So that's quite handy if you ever make a mistake or something like that. And that's it for most of the main features. If you have any other questions, then you can email me, ask on the thread, or read the documentation. Have fun making your games, and thanks for watching.